What's going on? You're watching Two Wheelin', and today we're gonna do an oil change of my 2008 WR250R. I've got the GoPro on my chest, so you should get a pretty nice perspective. I've got the factory service manual there, and we're just gonna follow through step by step exactly what the service manual says. So the manual also says to use 10W30 or 20W40 depending on your climate. Step 1. Start the engine, warm it up for several minutes, and then turn it off. I can do that. All right, so step 1 was just to get the engine warm. I've done that, and personally, I don't like getting an engine really hot because then it's really easy to burn yourself on it, and I just don't want to mess with that. So now my engine's warm, but not hot enough to burn me, and I'm going to start. Now, one thing that's not going to be mentioned in the service manual, but most people are going to have to deal with, is a skid plate. So I've got to remove the skid plate real quick. So skid plates a lot of the time will have a hole for you to drain the oil through, but I usually find that that ends up being really messy, so I just took it off. We've done step 1, start the engine, warm it up for several minutes, turn it off. 2, place a container under the engine oil drain bolt. So we're gonna place that under the engine drain. All right, now all you need to drain the engine oil is a 12mm socket. Look at that. Perfect. All right, another note, the manual does say to remove the filler cap. I purposefully didn't do that because I didn't want a ton of it to come out. All that's gonna do is accelerate the flow. So since I'm replacing the filter, we're gonna do that while it's draining. For the filter, it's just these 3 bolts. If you're like me and you spill oil everywhere, a good trick is to lay down some cardboard and it'll soak it right up. So now that I have this off, another good step is to inspect your oil filter. Look for any kind of metal shavings because that's a really big red flag that something's wrong with your engine. Looking at mine, I can see that it's a little dirty, but there's nothing to be alarmed about, so that's a good sign. All right, so all you have to do next is replace this O-ring here and install your new oil filter. A good idea would be to cover the rubber surfaces here in some oil. Unfortunately, my camera cut out here for the oil filter installation, but as you can see, it only goes in one way and it should be pretty self-explanatory. If you have any questions about that, please be sure to leave a comment and I'll be happy to answer them. All we have to do now is snug these up and torque them to 7.2 foot-pounds. There it is. There it is. You may have to push your brake lever down to get to this next bolt. All right, so that click means we're in business. All right, the next step here is to inspect your drain bolt and the seal here. So you can see there's a copper washer. That is a crush washer, and it's important that it is clean and in good condition. So this one is, we're just going to reinstall it. Torque for the drain bolt is 14 foot-pounds. That was easy. All right, so the manual says you need 1.4 quarts of oil if you replaced the oil filter, which I did. So I'm gonna measure out 1.4 quarts and go ahead and fill it. This is the last 400 cc's. What I recommend is, say for example, you're putting 1.4 quarts in, don't go ahead and put all of that in just right off the bat. I would leave maybe 100 cc's off of it, measure your oil level, and then adjust from there. Because if you put too much in, it's really hard to take it out. I would advise that you maybe don't pour all of your oil in, cut it just, 50, 100 cc's short, somewhere around there at least. And then check your oil level and add more as needed. All right, here's the last 400. Okay, so like I said, I've left about 100 cc's out. I'm gonna go ahead and close it all up, run the engine for a bit, check the oil level, and then add more as needed. So that was just I don't know, 20 seconds running, and that should be enough to circulate the oil. Now I'm gonna check the oil level. So as it turns out, my oil level is actually right at the top mark. To check your oil level, it's pretty self-explanatory. On the WR, you just stand it upright, and on the side, right here, there's a little sight glass, and all you do is get the bike up straight and look at that sight glass. There's an upper and a lower, and you want your oil to be somewhere in between there, not higher, not lower. So right now mine's actually a tad bit high. I have a feeling that's gonna go down as the oil circulates a little bit, so I'm just gonna leave it be. All right, so with that said, our oil level is good. All I have to do is put the fill cap on, which I've already done, and go ahead and put the skid plate on too. And with that, the oil change is done. It's really a pretty simple process on these WRs. There's only one fill and only one drain. It's pretty darn easy. If you liked the video, please be sure to hit like and consider subscribing. I'd really appreciate it. I typically post a video a week, always of two-wheel related content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.